Ambassador Zarathik stood in the center of the great council chamber, her crystalline skin catching the light from a dozen different star systems. The representatives of 43 species watched her every move, waiting for her answer. The Velthari Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, but today they were asking for something that went against everything her people believed in. A marriage alliance, she repeated, her voice carrying the musical tone that marked her species. You want me to marry one of them? Councillor Vrexcon leaned forward from his floating platform. His ancient eyes, which had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, looked tired. The humans have been a problem for too long, Ambassador. Their little colony world should have fallen to our forces years ago. Instead, they keep fighting back with tactics we don't understand. Zarathix had read the reports. New Terra was supposed to be an easy conquest. The humans had no energy shields, no quantum weapons, no neural interfaces that connected them to their ships. Their technology was basic compared to the Empire's advanced systems. Yet somehow they had held back 3 invasion fleets. Each time the Imperial Navy had expected victory. Each time they had been forced to retreat with heavy losses. Perhaps we are using the wrong approach, suggested Ambassador Kethra of the Ethereal Collective. Her thoughts touched Zarathix's mind gently, sharing images of the battles. These humans fight differently than any species we have encountered. They do not follow the accepted rules of warfare. They fight like animals, growled General Thaxmore, his massive Krillian frame dwarfing the other representatives. They use their own ships as weapons. They set traps in space. They hide behind asteroids and attack supply lines. There is no honor in their methods. But that was exactly what worried Zarathix. Species that fought without honor often fought without limits. The Velthari Empire had conquered most of the galaxy by understanding how other races thought and fought. They knew that the proud Krillians would always charge directly at their enemies. They knew that the Ethereal Collective would try to win battles with mind tricks before using weapons. They knew that most species had rules about what was acceptable in war. The humans seemed to have no such rules. The marriage alliance will give us someone close to their leadership. Councillor Vrexcon continued. Your husband will trust you with information. You will learn their weaknesses. More importantly, the marriage will create a peace treaty that gives us time to study them properly. Zarathix touched the communication device on her wrist. A holographic image appeared in the air, showing her the human representative who had agreed to this arrangement. Marcus Chen looked ordinary by galactic standards. He was not tall like the Krillians or graceful like the Ethereals. His skin was brown and unmarked by the scars that most warrior species carried with pride. His hair was black and cut short in a simple style. His clothes were plain and practical. Most disturbing of all, he was smiling. Why would their representative agree to this? She asked. What does he gain from marrying me? Peace for his people, answered Ambassador Kethra. The humans know they cannot win against the full might of the Empire. This marriage offers them protection. As long as you are wed to one of them, we cannot simply destroy their world. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. Zarathix had studied the files on Marcus Chen. He was not just any human. He had served as their military advisor during all 3 fleet battles. The report said he was the one who had suggested many of their unusual tactics. If anyone understood human warfare, it was him. You have concerns, observed Councillor Vrexcon. It was not a question. The old politician had not held power for 600 years by missing the subtle signs of doubt. I am wondering why a military advisor would agree to leave his people at such a critical time. Zarathix replied carefully. It suggests either great sacrifice for peace or great confidence that his people no longer need his help. The chamber fell silent. Representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The same thought had occurred to many of them, but no one had wanted to voice it. If the humans were confident enough to send away their best military mind, what did that say about their hidden capabilities? The decision has been made, announced Councillor Vrexcon finally. The marriage will proceed. Ambassador Zarathix, you will wed the human Marcus Chen in 3 days' time on the neutral station, Harmony's Rest. The ceremony will be broadcast across the galaxy as a symbol of peace between our peoples. Zarathix bowed her head in acceptance. She had known this moment would come. As the daughter of one of the Empire's oldest families, she had been raised to serve the state above all else. If the Empire needed her to marry an alien for political reasons, she would do it without complaint, but that did not mean she had to like it. 3 days later, she stood in the observation deck of Harmony's Rest, looking out at the stars. The station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built by 7 different species as a place where diplomats could meet on neutral ground. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of worlds. Each one had come to witness what many were calling the most important wedding in galactic history. "Nervous?" asked a voice behind her. Zarathix turned to see Marcus Chen approaching. He was wearing formal clothes from his world, a black jacket and pants with a white shirt underneath. The outfit was simple but well made. What struck her most was that he was still smiling. Not the polite expression that diplomats wore during negotiations, but a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Should I be?" she replied. "Most people are nervous before their wedding," he said, stopping beside her at the window, "even when they're marrying for love. I imagine it's worse when you're marrying a stranger from another species for political reasons." His honesty surprised her. Most diplomats would have pretended that this was a normal marriage between 2 people who cared for each other. Marcus seemed to have no interest in such pretense. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "A little," he admitted, "but also curious. I've read about your people, but I've never had a chance to really talk with one of you. I'm looking forward to learning more about the Velthari Empire." There was something in the way he said it that made her study his face more carefully. He spoke like someone who was genuinely interested in learning, but there was something else beneath the surface. A sharpness in his eyes that reminded her of the intelligence reports about his military service. "What would you like to know?" she asked. "Everything," he said simply. "Your history, your culture, your technology, your military tactics. I want to understand how you think." "Why?" His smile widened slightly. "Because you're going to be my wife. And because understanding is the foundation of both peace and war." Before she could ask what he meant by that, the ceremony bell chimed across the station. It was time for them to be married. As they walked together toward the chapel, Zarathix found herself wondering if the Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had wanted to place a spy close to human leadership, but what if the humans had done the same thing? What if Marcus Chen was learning just as much about them as she was supposed to learn about him? The wedding ceremony was beautiful and strange. Representatives from both species had worked together to create a ritual that honored both traditions. Zarathix spoke the ancient vows of her people, promising to bind her life to his until the stars grew cold. Marcus spoke words from his culture about love and loyalty and partnership. When it was over, they were husband and wife according to the laws of both civilizations. The galaxy had 2 new allies bound together by marriage and treaty. As they posed for pictures that would be seen on 1,000 worlds, Zarathix caught Marcus looking at the assembled diplomats and military officers with that same sharp intelligence she had noticed before. He was studying them, learning from them, filing away information for future use. She realized that while the Empire thought they were gaining a spy in human territory, the humans had just placed their own observer at the heart of galactic politics. The game had begun, and she was not sure which side had the advantage. The quarters on Harmony's Rest were larger than most diplomatic suites, designed to house 2 very different species in reasonable comfort. Zarathix had claimed the bedroom with the mineral bed that her people preferred, while Marcus had set up the human-style furniture in the main living area. For the first week of their marriage, they had circled each other like cautious animals. Polite but distant, it was Marcus who broke the pattern. "You're studying me," he said one morning as she watched him perform his daily exercise routine. He was hanging from a metal bar, pulling his body weight up and down in what humans called pull-ups. The display of physical strength was unnecessary, given the station's artificial gravity systems, but he did it anyway. "Yes," she admitted. There was no point in denying the obvious. "I am trying to understand your species. Your physical capabilities seem limited compared to most galactic races, yet you have somehow defeated our fleets 3 times. Marcus dropped from the bar and wiped sweat from his forehead with a small cloth. "Limited in some ways, superior in others. We evolved on a world that was trying to kill us every day. That leaves marks." "What kind of marks?" He gestured to his exercise equipment. "Physical marks. Humans are endurance hunters. We can run for hours without stopping. We can go days without food or water if necessary. We heal quickly from injuries. Most importantly, we adapt fast to new situations." Zarathix made notes on her datapad. This was useful information, but it did not explain their military successes. "Your technology is still primitive. Your ships lack energy shields. Your weapons are kinetic rather than energy-based. How do you compensate for these disadvantages? By not thinking of them as disadvantages, Marcus replied, beginning another set of exercises. This time he was lifting heavy objects repeatedly, which seemed even more pointless than the hanging routine. We use what we have instead of wishing for what we don't have. She watched him continue his workout for several more minutes before asking, "Why do you maintain these physical rituals?" "The station provides everything you need to stay healthy." "Because I might not always be on a station like this," he said without stopping his movements. "Humans prepare for worst-case scenarios. We assume that someday we'll need every advantage we can get." That evening, Marcus cooked dinner using ingredients from both their worlds. Zarathix had expected the food to be terrible. Most species could not properly prepare meals for others, but it was surprisingly good. He had somehow found ways to combine Velthari minerals with human spices that enhanced both flavors. "You learn quickly," she observed. "I had a good teacher," he replied, indicating the cooking videos he had been watching on his personal device. "Your people have excellent educational materials available on the Galactic Network. You have been studying our culture?" "Everything I can find. History, art, military doctrine, technological development, social structures, religious beliefs. I want to understand my new family." The word family caught her attention. "Is that how you see the Empire? As your family?" Marcus paused in his eating, considering the question carefully. "Humans have a saying, when you marry someone, you don't just marry them. You marry their whole family. That means I'm now connected to every Velthari citizen. They're all my responsibility now." Responsibility? To protect them, to help them, to make sure they're safe and happy. He said it as casually as he might discuss the weather, but Zarathix heard something deeper in his tone. That's what family means to humans. It's not just about genetics or politics. It's about choosing to care for people. She found this concept disturbing. The idea that a human might consider himself responsible for protecting 60 billion Velthari citizens was either touching or terrifying, depending on how one looked at it. How far does this sense of responsibility extend? As far as necessary. Marcus returned to his meal, but she could see him thinking. Humans have another saying, blood is thicker than water. But we also believe that chosen family can be stronger than birth family. When we decide to care about someone, we care completely. Over the following days, Zarathix began to notice things about her husband that the official reports had missed. He asked questions constantly, but not random questions. Everything he wanted to know seemed to fit into some larger pattern she could not quite see. He would ask about Velthari military ranks one day, then about their supply chain management the next. He wanted to know about their decision-making processes, their communication protocols, their emergency procedures. "You are gathering intelligence," she accused him one afternoon. "Yes," he agreed without any sign of guilt or embarrassment, "just like you are." She had been doing exactly that, of course. Her own reports back to the Empire contained detailed observations about human psychology, physical capabilities, and cultural practices. But something about his casual admission bothered her. "Are you planning to use this information against my people?" Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the question.
"Why would I want to hurt my family?"
"Because we are not actually your family. This marriage is a political arrangement. When it serves human interests, you will act against the Empire. Will I?" He tilted his head, studying her face. "What makes you think that?" "Because that is how politics works. People use whatever advantages they can find to benefit their own side." "Maybe," Marcus said. "Or maybe humans think about politics differently than other species do." That night, Zarathix found herself unable to sleep. She kept thinking about their conversation and about the intelligence reports she had been sending to the Empire. Marcus was clearly gathering information about Velthari society, but his motives remained unclear. He seemed genuinely interested in their culture rather than just looking for weaknesses to exploit. More troubling was her growing realization that he was much more intelligent than anyone had expected. The reports had described him as a competent military advisor, but they had underestimated his analytical abilities. He was not just learning about the Empire, he was understanding it in ways that most outsiders never could. She decided to test him. "I have been wondering about something," she said the next morning as they shared breakfast. "Your species defeated our fleets using tactics we had never seen before. Where did those ideas come from?" "From studying your previous battles," Marcus replied. Humans are good at learning from what others have done before. We saw how you fought the Krillians and the Ethereals and the other species you conquered. Then we figured out what those species had done wrong. And what was that? They tried to fight you the way they fought each other. They used their traditional tactics and assumed you would respond in traditional ways. But you didn't. You adapted faster than they did. Zarathix nodded. This was accurate. The Empire's military success came from their ability to analyze enemy tactics and develop countermeasures quickly. So we decided not to fight you the way everyone else had. Marcus continued. Instead, we studied what you were good at and then did something completely different. Such as, you expect enemies to protect their important ships and sacrifice their less valuable ones. So we made all our ships valuable by putting critical systems on every vessel. You expect battles to happen in open space where your superior technology gives you advantages. So we fought in asteroid fields and gas clouds where sensors don't work well. You expect surrender when losses become too high. So we never showed you how many ships we were actually losing. She stared at him. You were hiding your casualties? Among other things. Marcus smiled, but it was not the friendly expression she had grown used to. For a moment, she saw something harder underneath. Humans are very good at making things look worse or better than they actually are, depending on what the situation requires. You were lying to us. We were protecting ourselves. There's a difference. Zarathix felt a chill run through her crystalline structure. What else were you hiding? That would be telling, Marcus said, and his smile returned to its normal warmth. But I will say this. Everything you think you know about human capabilities is based on what we wanted you to know. We're much better at hiding things than most species realize. She spent the rest of the day trying to figure out if he was telling the truth or if this was just another form of psychological warfare. The problem was that she was beginning to care about his opinion of her. Despite the political nature of their marriage, she found herself looking forward to their conversations. He was interesting in ways she had not expected. That evening, as they watched a documentary about Veltari history together, Marcus made casual comments that showed he understood her people's motivations better than most Empire citizens did. He saw patterns in their expansion that even their own historians had missed. He understood why certain planets had been conquered easily while others had resisted for decades. You see things differently than we do, she observed. Humans see everything differently, he replied. That's why we're so hard to predict. We don't think like any other species in the galaxy. Is that why you agreed to this marriage? To show us how humans think? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than usual. I agreed to this marriage because I thought it might be the beginning of something better than war. Humans prefer to make friends rather than enemies when possible. Even with people who tried to conquer you? Especially with P, the attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. Zarathix was reviewing intelligence reports from the Empire when the station's emergency alarms began screaming throughout Harmony's Rest. The pleasant artificial lighting shifted to harsh red warnings as automated voices announced the crisis in 17 different languages. All residents proceed to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Hostile forces detected approaching the station. Marcus was at her side within seconds, moving faster than she had seen him move before. Gone was the casual, friendly demeanor she had grown accustomed to. His face was calm but focused, his movements sharp and precise. He was already reaching for a communication device she had never seen him carry. Who's attacking? She asked, following him toward their quarters security console. Krillians, he replied, studying the tactical display that appeared in the air above the console. 3 battle groups coming in fast from different directions. They're not targeting the station specifically. Zarathix looked at the display, reading the movement patterns of the attacking ships. She had studied military tactics as part of her diplomatic training, but this level of coordination suggested careful planning. They're targeting both Empire and human ships that are docked here. This is not a random raid. No, it's not. Marcus was speaking into his communication device in rapid, clipped sentences. She caught fragments of what he was saying. Confirm all assets are in position. Authorization Omega-77. Execute Contingency Plan Delta. What contingency plan? She demanded. He looked at her with an expression she could not read. The one we hoped we would never need to use. The station shook as the first enemy weapon struck its outer shields, through the transparent walls of their quarters. Zarathix could see Krillian warships swooping past like deadly birds. Their black hulls were covered in weapon ports that glowed with charging energy. These were not exploration vessels or diplomatic ships. They were pure instruments of war, built for one purpose: destroying everything in their path. "The station's defenses won't hold for long," she said, calculating the firepower ratios in her head. "We need to evacuate." "No," Marcus said firmly. "We need to fight." Before she could ask what he meant, new ships appeared on the tactical display. At first, she thought they were more Krillian reinforcements, but their configuration was wrong. These vessels were smaller, more maneuverable, and they were moving in formation patterns she had never seen before. "Human ships," Marcus explained, watching her confusion. "They were waiting in the asteroid field, hidden until we needed them." "Waiting for what? How did they know to be here?" "Because we've been expecting this attack for weeks." He was still speaking into his communication device, issuing orders to people she could not hear. "The Krillians have been planning to disrupt the peace treaty by attacking the station, where our marriage took place. They want to start a war between humans and the Empire by making it look like one of us attacked the other." Zarathix stared at the display as human ships engaged the Krillian forces. The battle that unfolded was unlike anything she had seen in the military archives. Human vessels moved in unpredictable patterns, using the station's structure as cover, coordinating their attacks with a precision that suggested extensive practice. "You knew this was coming," she said. "It was not a question. We suspected it. Krillians are not subtle when they plan military operations. We've been monitoring their communications for months." "Then why didn't you warn the Empire?" Marcus paused in his radio communications to look at her. "We did. Your military command decided our intelligence was unreliable." She remembered now. There had been reports from human sources about possible Krillian military buildup near neutral territories. The Empire's analysts had dismissed them as attempts to spread panic or gain strategic advantages through false information. The idea that humans could gather better intelligence than the Empire's sophisticated networks had seemed absurd. "How?" she asked. "How what?" "How are you getting better information than our intelligence services?" "Because we think like prey animals instead of predators," Marcus replied. "When you've spent most of your history being hunted by things bigger and stronger than you are, you get very good at watching for danger." The station shook again, more violently this time. Emergency lighting flickered as power systems struggled to maintain themselves under the strain of multiple impacts. Through the transparent walls, Zarathix could see escape pods launching from the civilian sections, carrying diplomats and staff to safety. "We should evacuate," she said again. "I can't leave," Marcus replied. "I'm coordinating the defense. From here, you're not on a ship. You're not connected to the fleet's command network. How are you coordinating anything?" He smiled, but it was not the warm expression she had grown used to. This smile was sharp and dangerous. Humans are full of surprises. As if to prove his point, the battle outside shifted dramatically. What had appeared to be a desperate defense suddenly became a coordinated counterattack. Human ships that had seemed scattered and disorganized reformed into tight attack formations. New vessels appeared from directions where the sensors had detected nothing moments before. "Stealth technology," Zarathix breathed, recognizing what she was seeing. But the report said humans didn't have stealth capabilities. "The report said a lot of things that weren't true," Marcus replied. He was watching the tactical display with the focused intensity of a predator tracking prey. "We've been very careful about what information we allowed other species to discover about our capabilities. You've been lying to the entire galaxy. We've been protecting ourselves. When you're the smallest and weakest species in a neighborhood full of potential enemies, deception becomes a survival skill." The Krillian formation was collapsing. Ships that had seemed invincible minutes earlier were now retreating or sending out distress signals. The human vessels pursued them with relentless efficiency, their weapons systems proving far more effective than anyone had expected. "This is impossible," Zarathix said, watching the tactical display. 3 Krillian battle groups should be able to destroy a human fleet twice this size." "Under normal circumstances, yes," Marcus agreed. "But these aren't normal circumstances. We've been preparing for this specific scenario for months. Every ship out there knows exactly what its role is. Every pilot has practiced these maneuvers dozens of times. Every weapon system has been optimized for fighting Krillian technology." "You planned this entire battle?" "We planned for dozens of possible battles. This was scenario number 7 on our list. The main Krillian command ship was trying to escape, its massive engines glowing as it attempted to reach jump distance, but human fighters were swarming around it like insects, targeting its drive systems with surgical precision. Within minutes, the great ship was drifting powerless in space. "Surrender," Marcus spoke into his communication device. "All Krillian vessels, this is Human Fleet Command. You are outgunned and surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Zarathix listened to the responses coming through the communication system. One by one, Krillian commanders acknowledged defeat and agreed to surrender terms. Ships that had been firing at each other minutes earlier were now negotiating prisoner exchanges and medical assistance for the wounded. "How?" she asked again. "How what this time? How did a species that was nearly conquered just months ago suddenly become capable of defeating one of the galaxy's most feared military forces?" Marcus turned off his communication device and looked at her directly. For the first time since she had known him, she saw something that might have been sadness in his eyes. "We were never nearly conquered," he said quietly. "We were learning." "Learning what?" "Everything. How you fight, how you think, how you make decisions under pressure. Every fleet you sent against us taught us something new about galactic military doctrine. We studied your weapons, your tactics, your command structures. We analyzed every mistake you made and every success you achieved." Zarathix felt something cold settle in her chest. "The first 3 battles, you could have won them. We could have won the second and third ones, yes. The first was genuinely difficult because we didn't understand your technology yet. But the others," he shrugged. "We needed you to believe you were winning. We needed time to prepare for bigger threats. Like the Krillians. Like everyone." Marcus gestured toward the tactical display, where human ships were now assisting with rescue operations and medical aid for wounded Krillian crews. "Humans prefer to avoid fights when possible, but when someone forces us to fight, we fight to win permanently." "What does that mean?" "It means that after today, no one in the galaxy will look at humanity the same way. The Krillians just learned that their military superiority is not as absolute as they thought. Other species will start to wonder what else they don't know about human capabilities." Zarathix understood now why Marcus had agreed to this marriage. It was not just about creating peace between humans and the Empire. It was about positioning himself to observe and understand the political reactions that would follow this demonstration of human military power. "You used me," she said. "Yes," he admitted without hesitation. People who tried to conquer. The emergency council session convened 6 hours after the Krillian surrender. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy attended via hologram, their faces showing varying degrees of shock, confusion, and fear. Zarathix sat beside Marcus in the main conference chamber of Harmony's Rest, watching as the political implications of the battle began to unfold. "Explain to us again how a human fleet destroyed 3 Krillian battle groups without losing a single ship," demanded General Thaxmore. The massive Krillian's voice carried barely controlled rage as he stared at Marcus through the holographic projection. "Superior tactics and preparation," Marcus replied calmly. "Your forces attacked a prepared defensive position using predictable strategies. The outcome was inevitable once you committed to the assault." "Impossible," growled another Krillian officer. "Our ships are superior to human technology in every measurable way. Our weapons are more powerful. Our armor is stronger, our engines are faster." "All true," Marcus agreed. "But you've been fighting the same way for the past 2,000 years. Once we understood your patterns, developing countermeasures was simply a matter of time and effort." Counselor Vrexcon leaned forward from his position at the head of the virtual council table. "Are you telling us that humanity has been deliberately concealing their military capabilities?" "I'm telling you that humanity has been learning while you've been assuming," Marcus replied. "Every species in this galaxy believes they understand what humans are capable of based on limited observations. None of you bothered to consider that we might be capable of more than we chose to demonstrate." Ambassador Kethra of the Ethereal Collective spoke next, her mental voice carrying undertones of genuine concern. "The implications of this deception are troubling. If humans have been hiding their true strength, what other capabilities might they possess?" Marcus smiled, and Zarathix had learned to recognize that particular expression. It was the look he wore when he was about to reveal something that would change how everyone thought about a situation. "That's an excellent question," he said. "Let me show you something." He activated a portable holographic projector that created a three-dimensional map of local space. Stars and planets appeared in the air above the conference table, marked with different colors to indicate political control. Most of the map showed Velthari Empire territory in blue, with smaller areas belonging to other species. "This is what you think human space looks like," Marcus said, highlighting a small cluster of yellow dots near the edge of the map. 12 star systems, 43 colony worlds, approximately 2 billion human citizens. "That is correct," confirmed Counselor Vrexkan. "Our surveys have mapped all human-controlled territory." "Your surveys have mapped all the territory we wanted you to find," Marcus corrected. He touched a control on the projector, and suddenly the map was filled with new yellow indicators. Hundreds of star systems that had appeared empty or uninhabited now showed human presence. The small cluster of known human worlds was revealed to be just the tip of a vast colonial network. The council chamber fell silent. Even the artificial intelligence systems seemed to pause their background humming as the implications sank in. "Impossible," whispered General Thaxmore. "We would have detected such an extensive colonial expansion." "You detected what we wanted you to detect," Marcus replied. "Humans are very good at hiding. We've had 300 years to practice staying invisible while we explored and colonized space. Every species in the galaxy has been so focused on the territory you knew about that none of you noticed what was happening in the regions you ignored." Zarathix stared at the updated map. According to the new data, human territory was nearly as large as the Velthari Empire. Hundreds of star systems, thousands of worlds, billions of people who had been living and working and building while the rest of the galaxy thought of humanity as a minor colonial power. "The population figures," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How many humans are there, really?" "Current estimates suggest approximately 40 billion human citizens across known space," Marcus replied casually. "Plus or minus a few billion for colonies that haven't reported census data recently." "That's impossible," declared Ambassador Yethek of the Silicon Confederacy. "Our economic models show that such a population would require massive resource extraction operations." "We would have detected the industrial signatures." "You would have detected conventional industrial signatures," Marcus agreed. "But humans developed different approaches to manufacturing and resource processing. We learned early that being noticed by galactic civilization was dangerous. So we designed our technology to have minimal detection profiles." He touched another control, and the holographic display shifted to show industrial capacity charts. The numbers were staggering. According to the data, human manufacturing capability exceeded that of most major galactic powers. "These figures cannot be accurate," insisted Counselor Vrexkan. "The energy requirements alone would create gravitational anomalies that our sensors would detect. Only if we use the same energy sources that other species rely on," Marcus replied. "Humans have always been good at finding alternative solutions to difficult problems. When conventional power sources proved too detectable, we developed others." "What kind of others?" demanded General Thaxmore. "The kind that don't show up on standard sensor sweeps because they operate on principles that most galactic species haven't discovered yet." The conference chamber erupted in simultaneous conversations as representatives tried to process what they were hearing. Zarathix watched the chaos and realized that this moment would be remembered as the point when galactic politics changed forever. The balance of power that had dominated the galaxy for millennia had just shifted dramatically. "Why reveal this now?" asked Ambassador Kethra, her mental voice cutting through the noise. "Humans could have maintained their deception indefinitely." "What changed?" Marcus looked directly at the ethereal representative, and his expression became serious. "Because the deception was always temporary. We knew that eventually someone would discover the truth, either through accident or investigation. We preferred to control when and how that revelation happened. You chose this moment because of the Krillian attack," Zarathix realized. "You wanted to demonstrate your capabilities under circumstances that would make them seem defensive, rather than aggressive." "Partly," Marcus admitted. "But also because humanity has reached a point where hiding is no longer necessary. We've established ourselves as a major galactic power whether other species recognize it or not. Now it's time to start acting like one." "Acting like one how?" asked Counselor Vrexkan suspiciously. "By taking responsibility for galactic security," Marcus replied. "The Krillian attack today was just a symptom of a larger problem. Too many species in this galaxy believe that military strength gives them the right to attack anyone they perceive as weak. That kind of thinking leads to endless cycles of conquest and war. And you believe humanity can prevent such conflicts? I believe humanity can demonstrate that there are consequences for unprovoked aggression, Marcus said firmly. Today's battle was an example. The Krillians attacked civilian targets and threatened non-combatants. We stopped them and accepted their surrender when they realized they were defeated. But if they had continued fighting, or if they had refused to surrender, the outcome would have been very different. General Thaxmore leaned forward aggressively. Are you threatening the Krillian hegemony? I'm explaining the new reality, Marcus replied without backing down. Humans will no longer tolerate attacks on innocent people, regardless of their species or political affiliation. We consider every sentient being in this galaxy to be under our protection now. Under your protection? Counselor Vrexkin's voice carried dangerous undertones. The Velthari Empire does not require protection from anyone. The Empire is family, Marcus said, looking directly at Zarathix. Family protects each other, but the rest of the galaxy, he shrugged. They can choose to accept our protection and live peacefully, or they can choose to test our resolve and face the consequences. And if we refuse both options? Demanded General Thaxmore. Marcus smiled again, and this time there was no warmth in the expression at all. Then you'll discover that everything you think you know about human military capabilities is just as wrong as everything else you thought you knew about us. The threat was delivered so casually that it took several seconds for the full implications to register. When they did, the representatives began talking simultaneously again, their voices overlapping in a chaos of accusations, demands, and barely concealed panic. Zarathix watched her husband calmly observe the political storm he had created. She realized that this had all been planned long before the Krillian attack, possibly even before their marriage. The humans had been working toward this moment for years, maybe decades, carefully positioning themselves to reshape galactic civilization according to their own principles. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we find out which species are smart enough to accept the new reality and which ones need more convincing, Marcus replied. Some will adapt quickly. Others will try to form alliances against us. A few will probably attempt direct military action. And then we teach them the same lesson we taught the Krillians today, except we won't be as gentle about it. Zarathix looked around the conference, 6 months after what historians would later call the Harmony's Rest incident. Zarathix stood in the medical bay of the diplomatic station, watching the readouts from her examination with a mixture of wonder and concern. The medical scanner confirmed what she had suspected for weeks. She was carrying the first human Velthari hybrid child in galactic history. Dr. Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister and the station's chief medical officer, studied the scans with professional interest. Everything looks normal considering we're dealing with completely unprecedented genetics, she said in the matter-of-fact tone that seemed to run in the Chen family. The baby is developing well, and your body is adapting to the biological changes better than our models predicted. What kind of changes? Zarathix asked, though she suspected she already knew some of the answers. Physical resilience, enhanced healing rates, improved sensory capabilities, Dr. Chen listed. It appears that human and Velthari genetics are more compatible than anyone expected. Your child will likely have advantages from both species. Marcus entered the medical bay as his sister was explaining the test results. He moved with the quiet confidence that had become second nature to him. But Zarathix could see the concern in his eyes when he looked at the medical displays. Any complications? He asked. None so far, Dr. Chen replied. But we're still learning as we go. This pregnancy is being monitored by medical teams from 12 different species. Everyone wants to understand how cross-species genetics work. And everyone wants to know what our child will be capable of, Zarathix added. She had seen the intelligence reports. Every major government in the galaxy was speculating about the potential abilities of a human Velthari hybrid. Some were excited by the possibilities. Others were terrified. Marcus took her hand, a gesture that had become natural over the months of their marriage. Whatever our child can do, we'll make sure they grow up in a galaxy where it's safe to be different. That, Zarathix knew, was the key challenge facing galactic civilization. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had triggered a complete reorganization of interstellar politics. Some species had adapted quickly to the new reality, eager to establish positive relationships with their newly powerful neighbors. Others had reacted with fear and suspicion, forming defensive alliances against the human threat. The Krillian hegemony had chosen the latter path, launching 3 more attacks against human targets in the months following their defeat at Harmony's Rest. Each attack had failed more spectacularly than the last, as human military forces demonstrated capabilities that seemed to improve with every engagement. The final assault had ended with the complete surrender of the Krillian military and the installation of a new government that was far more interested in peaceful cooperation. How many more species will need convincing? Zarathix asked as they walked from the medical bay toward their quarters. Fewer and fewer, Marcus replied. Most governments are smart enough to learn from other people's mistakes. The Krillians provided a very educational example of what happens when you keep attacking someone who's stronger than you are. The corridor they walked through had been renovated since the attack 6 months earlier. What had once been simple diplomatic quarters were now reinforced against military assault, with hidden defensive systems that could protect the station's inhabitants from anything short of a direct planetary bombardment. The changes were subtle but effective, representing the new reality of galactic politics. The ethereal collective requested another meeting, Zarathix mentioned as they reached their quarters. Ambassador Kethra wants to discuss mutual defense protocols, which means they want to make sure we'll protect them if someone decides to test human resolve again, Marcus translated. We'll accept, of course. The ethereals have always been reasonable to deal with. It was true. In the months since the revelation of human capabilities, several species had approached humanity seeking protection agreements. The terms were generally simple. In exchange for human military protection, these species provided access to their technology, resources, or strategic territories. It was not quite an empire in the traditional sense, but it was clearly a new form of galactic organization, with humanity at its center. What about the Empire? Zarathix asked. My people are still struggling to understand their new relationship with humanity. Marcus sat down in his favorite chair, a piece of human furniture that had been modified to accommodate Velthari physiology as well. The Empire is family, he said, using the phrase that had become his standard response to questions about Velthari human relations. Family relationships are complicated, but they're permanent. That was certainly true. The Velthari Empire had initially reacted to the human revelations with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. They felt deceived by their new allies and uncertain about their own position in the changing galactic order. But as other species began forming alliances with humanity, the Empire had gradually come to understand that their marriage alliance put them in a uniquely advantageous position. Counselor Vrexcon believes the Empire should demand renegotiation of our treaty terms, Zarathix said. What do you think? Marcus asked. She considered the question carefully. Over the months of their marriage, she had learned to trust Marcus's judgment on political matters, but she had also developed her own opinions about galactic affairs. I think the Empire would be foolish to risk the relationship we have now for the possibility of slightly better terms in a new agreement. Agreed. Besides, once our child is born, the relationship between our peoples will be about more than politics. That was the real change that worried some species and excited others. A human Velthari hybrid would be living proof that the barriers between species were not as absolute as everyone had believed. If 2 very different species could produce offspring together, what other combinations might be possible? What would galactic society look like in a generation or 2 when interspecies families became common? There's something else, Zarathix said. I've been reading the intelligence reports from human space. The colonies that were revealed 6 months ago, they're not just colonies, are they? Marcus was quiet for a moment, and she recognized the expression that meant he was deciding how much truth to share. What do you think they are? Research facilities, manufacturing centers, military bases. The entire hidden colonial network is actually a vast industrial and scientific complex that's been developing new technologies, while the rest of the galaxy assumed humans were struggling to survive. That's a very perceptive analysis, which means it's correct. Zarathix felt a familiar mixture of admiration and unease when she realized just how far ahead of everyone else the humans had been planning. What have you been developing out there? Solutions to problems that the galaxy doesn't know it has yet. Before she could ask what that meant, their communication system activated with an incoming priority message. The holographic display showed the seal of the Galactic Council, indicating an emergency session had been called. "Now what?" Marcus muttered, accepting the communication. Counselor Vrexcon's image appeared in their living room, his ancient features showing unusual levels of stress. "Ambassador Zarathix, Admiral Chen, we have a situation that requires immediate attention. Long-range sensors have detected an approaching fleet from outside our galaxy. Size and capabilities unknown, but their trajectory suggests they will reach inhabited systems within 3 standard months." Marcus was already moving toward his communication equipment. "How long have you known about this?" "The initial detection was 48 hours ago. We wanted to confirm the readings before alerting member species." 48 hours, Marcus repeated, and Zarathix could hear disapproval in his voice. "In 48 hours, this fleet could have moved close enough to make defensive preparations much more difficult." "We are alerting you now," Counselor Vrexcon replied stiffly. "The Council requests that all member species contribute ships and resources to a unified defensive fleet." "That's not going to work," Marcus said bluntly. "A unified fleet using conventional galactic military doctrine will be destroyed if these newcomers have technology that's significantly more advanced than ours." "Then what do you suggest?" Marcus looked at Zarathix and she saw something in his expression that she had never seen before. Not fear exactly, but serious concern mixed with anticipation. "I suggest," he said slowly, "that it's time for the galaxy to see what humans have really been preparing for all these years." Over the following days, as reports came in about the approaching alien fleet, Zarathix watched her husband coordinate defensive preparations that revealed yet another layer of human capabilities. The hidden colonial network began producing ships and weapons based on designs that were decades ahead of known galactic technology. Human research facilities shared scientific breakthroughs that solved problems the established species had been struggling with for centuries. Most impressive of all, humanity began reaching out to every species in the galaxy, offering protection and cooperation regardless of their previous political relationships.